You don't need to tell me where it's at. Maybe, might be in any place. Sure, said George. That's right. You couldn't find it in 100 years. Candy went on excitedly. How much they want for that place like that? George watched him suspiciously. Well, I could get it for 600 bucks. The old people that owns it is flat, bust, and old lady needs an operation. Say, what's it to you? You got nothing to do with us. Candy said, I ain't much good with any old hand. I lost my hand right here on this ranch. That's why they give me a job swamping. And they give me $250 because I lost my hand. And I got 50 more saved up right in the bank right now. That's 300 and I got 50 more coming. The end of the month. Tell you what, he leaned forward eagerly. Suppose I went in with you guys. That's 350 bucks I put in. I ain't much good, but I could cook and tend the chickens and hoe the garden some. How'd that be? George half closed his eyes. I gotta think about that. We was always gonna do it by ourselves. Candy interrupted. I'd make a willin' leaving my share to you guys in a case I kick off, 'cause I ain't got no relatives, got nothing. You guys got any money? Maybe we could do her right now. George spat on the floor disgustedly. We got 10 bucks between us. Then he said thoughtfully, look, if me and Lenny work a month and don't spend nothing, we'll have 100 bucks. That'd be 450. I bet we could swing her for that. Then you and Lenny go on, get her started, and I get a job and make up the rest. And you could sell eggs and stuff like that. They fell into silence. They looked at one another amazed. This thing they had never really believed in was coming true. George said reverently, Jesus Christ, I bet we could swing her. His eyes were full of wonder. I bet we could swing her, he repeated softly. Candy sat on the edge of his bunk. He scratched the stump of his wrist nervously. I got hurt 4 years ago, he said. They'll can me pretty soon. Just as soon as I can't swap out no bunkhouse, they'll put me on the county. Maybe if I give you guys my money, you'll let me hoe in the garden, even if I ain't no good at it. And I'll wash dishes and little chicken stuff like that. But I'll be on our own place, and I'll be let to work on our own place, he said miserably. You seen what they done to my dog tonight? They says he wasn't no good by himself, nor anybody else. When they can hear me, I wishin' they'd shootin' him, but they won't do nothing like that. I won't have no place to go, and I can't get no jobs. I'll have $30 more coming time you guys is ready to quit. George stood up. We'll do her, he said. We'll fix her up like the old place, and we'll go live there. He sat down again. They all sat still, all bemused by the beauty of the thing. Each mind was propped into the future when this lovely thing should come about. George said wonderingly, Suppose there was a carnival or circus to come to town, or a ball game, or any damn thing. Old Candy nodded in appreciation of the idea. We'd just go on to her, George said. We wouldn't ask anybody if we could. Just say we'll go to her, and we would just milk the cow and sling some grain to the chickens and go to her. And put some grass to the rabbits, Lenny broke in. I wouldn't never forget to feed them when we gotten to do it, George. In 1 month, right squack in the month. Know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna write to them old people that owns that place and we'll take it. And Candy'll send $100 to bind her. Sure will, said Candy. They got a good stove there? Sure. Got a nice stove. Burns coal or wood. I'm gonna take my pup, said Lenny. I bet my Christ he lives it there. He likes it there. By Jesus. Voices were approaching from outside. George said quickly, Don't tell anybody about it. Just us three and nobody else. They liable to can us, so we can't make no stake. Just go on like we gonna buck barley the rest of our lives. Then all of a sudden someday we'll go get our play and scram out of here. Lenny and Candy nodded, and they were grinning with delight. Don't tell nobody, Lenny said to himself. Candy said, George? Huh? I ought to have shot that dog myself, George. I ought to have left no stranger shoot my dog. The door opened. Slim came in, followed by Curly and Carlson and Whit. Slim's hands were black with tar, and he was scowling. Curly hung close to his elbow. Curly said, Well, I didn't mean nothing, Slim. I just asked you. Slim said, Well, you've been asking me too often. I'm getting damn sick of it. If you can't look after your own goddamn wife, what would you expect me to do about it? You lay off of me. I'm just trying to tell you I didn't mean nothing, said Curly. I just thought you might have saw her. Wouldn't you tell me her to stay the hell home where she belongs, said Carlson. You let her hang around bunkhouses and pretty soon you're gonna have some pimp on your hands and you won't be able to do nothing about it. Curly whirled on Carlson. You keep out of this. You want to step outside? Carlson laughed. You goddamn punk, he said. You tried to throw a scare into Slim and you couldn't make it stick. Slim throwed a scare into you. You'll yell as a frog belly. I don't care if you're the best wetter in the country. You come for me and I'll kick your goddamn head off. Candy joined the attack with joy. Glove full of Vaseline, he said disgustedly. Curly glared at him. His eyes slipped on the past and lighted on Lenny. And Lenny was still smiling with delight at the memory of the ranch. Curly stepped over to Lenny like a terrier. What the hell you laughing at? Lenny looked blankly at him. Huh? Then Curly's rage exploded. Come on, you big bastard. Get on your feet. No big son of a bitch is gonna laugh at me. I'll show you who's yella. Lenny looked helplessly at George, and then he got up and tried to retreat. Curly was balanced and poised. He slashed at Lenny with his left, and then smashed down his nose with the right. Lenny gave a cry of terror. Blood welled from his nose. George, he cried. Make him let me alone, George. He backed until he was against the wall, and Curly followed. Slugged him in the face. Lenny's hands remained at his sides. He was too frightened to defend himself. George was on his feet yelling, Get him, Lenny! Don't let him do it! Lenny covered his face with his huge paws and bleated with terror. He cried, Make him stop, George! Then Curly attacked his stomach and cut off his wind. Slim jumped up. The dirty little rat, he cried. I'll get him myself. George put out his hand and grabbed Slim. Wait a minute, he shouted. He cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, Get him, Lenny! Lenny took his hands away from his face and looked about at George, and Curly slashed at his eyes. The big face was covered with blood. George yelled again. I said, Get him! Curly's fist was swinging when Lenny reached for it. The next minute, Curly was flogging like a fish on a line, and his closed fist was lost in Lenny's big hand. George ran down the room. Lego of him, Lenny! Lego! But Lenny watched in terror the flopping little man whom he held. Blood ran down Lenny's face. One of his eyes was cut and closed. George slashed him in the face again and again, and still Lenny held on to the closed fist. Curly was white and shrunken by now, and his struggling had become weak. He stood crying, his fist lost in Lenny's paw. George shouted over and over, "Lego his hand, Lenny! Lego! Slim, come help me while the guy got any hand left." Suddenly, Lenny let go of his hand. He crouched, cowering against the wall. "You told me to, George," he said miserably. Curly sat down on the floor, looking in wonder at his crushed hand. Slim and Carlson bent over him. Then Slim slightened up and regarded Lenny with honor. "We got to get him into the doctor," he said. "Looks to me like every bone in his hand is bust."